Aloha aina oye i'o. Well, let's look at this section on Ho'omana, Hawaii. Yeah, Ho'omana, Hawaii. And this would be simply the most closest association with an English concept would be something like the idea of religion. But really what it means is to worship. You want to use the word spirituality, that to relate to the English language. It's not exact fit, as well. I'll explain, but it's the closest that we can use in regards to thinking of the idea of Hawaiian religious ideologies and spirituality. As a great philosopher Suran says, civilization is destroyed only when its gods are destroyed. And so it's important to see the role that so-called gods or religious ideas have in holding the fabric of society. Yeah. So there's like a unified ideology. Yeah. That when those gods are destroyed, when the religious ideas are destroyed, so is the so-called civilization of that people. So what is religion? Again, just to be clear, just set of belief concerning the cause, nature, and purpose of the universe, right? Hence the cosmogonies, especially when considered as the creation of a superhuman agency, yeah, as an akua or agencies, usually involving devotional and ritual observances, yeah, and often containing a moral code governing the conduct of human affairs. So as you can see, yeah, this is why I start off with cosmogony de Kumulipo to kind of give us a real good shape and depth in understanding Hawaiian culture. Well, religion is also very much connected today to spiritual. People say, well, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. Again, you see the root word of spiritual is the word spirit, meaning that which is metaphysical, that which is beyond just the physical world. Yeah. Of pertaining to, of consisting of spirit, incorporeal, of or pertaining to the spirit or soul as distinguished from the physical nature. So in other words, that whether it's people or animals or things can have, there's more to than just the physical world. Yeah. So you can see its relationship to the ideas of religion. Polytheism, yeah, the word poly, which means many, the doctrine or belief in more than one so-called God or in many gods. Yeah, the idea that you have multiple so-called godlike forces is the idea of polytheism. And again, theism is a sense of godliness. Henotheism, which is probably the most prevalent you see in today's world, henotheism is the worship of a single supreme God that does not deny the existence or possible existence of other deities that may be worshipped. And this is probably, the best example that describes Judeo Christianity and Muslim beliefs, which roughly about half of the world um, adhere to, especially in the European and American or so-called West. But henotheism, again, is the idea that there is a supreme so-called God that is worshipped, but it doesn't deny that there are other so-called gods that may be prevalent. Now, even with the idea of Judaism and Christianity, many people don't realize that even in so-called from the ancient Hebrews and Judaism, that you have multiple so-called figures, and this is why you had different names. Yeah, you said Yahweh, Jehovah, Adonai, and you hear all these different words that are used. And when you kind of find the historical context, you realize, well, these were names of particular gods of the Canaanite Levantine region. Um, and then eventually, in fact, you can go back to even more ancient, yeah, to the Natufians and even to ancient Kemet society. And you start to see that um, these examples of, the idea of one true God over the rest is a ancient idea. Yeah. And even in the biblical sense, right? You can look at the language, let us make man in our image. Now, what does that mean? Let us make man in our image in the creation of so-called Adam. Well, who is so-called the creator speaking to? Yeah. Monotheism, yeah, the idea of only having one. There's only one God. Yeah, the oneness of God. Very much related, but the idea that that all these so-called ideas, there is only so-called, yeah, mano, one. Yeah. And historically we can go back to, again, ancient Kemet, Amenhotep, Amun. In fact, the word Amenhotep, in fact, even the prayers ending with the word Amen comes from this particular story, which said to be the first monotheistic people in the world. And that comes out of ancient um, what today we call Egypt or Kemet. Yeah. Well, what is a god? Yeah, believed to have more than natural attributes. In Hawaiian sense, what we use the word akua is beyond more than the so-called common kanaka. What is a deity? Well, a god or goddess. So you can see even the word deity, like in monotheism, the word day, um, is the same as so-called God, divine character or nature, especially that of a supreme being, divinity. Yeah, the being of sacredness. Yeah. So you can see there's these words sometimes seem very much interchangeable in akua. Well, what does the word sacred mean? And this is a kind of loaded word, many different meanings depending on cultural context. But sacred, you have some kind of dedication. You're devoted to some deity. Yeah, it's consecrated. Yeah, you're blessed. Yeah, you provide reverence for something, veneration. Yeah, you make something is holy, treat it as something special. Yeah, so in the Hawaiian context, I get asked this all the time. What makes a particular place sacred? And I say, well, traditionally, as I was taught, especially if it had anything to do with life, especially if it had to do with where all our lives are are dependent upon a particular place, for example, right? Think about high mountain areas, watersheds, right? Water being the source of life. Those places naturally where you have those areas, springs where people draw water from for life, yeah, these are all considered sacred. You're going to treat them in a special way, right? You're going to treat them in a way because it provides life. So that's kind of first simple way in a Hawaiian worldview. Secondly, is that many times we call those places also wahipana, which are places of stories, which are related to being sacred. But these are places that are maybe attached to an event, maybe attached to some religious idea, some religious story, some kind of spiritual awakening, whatever. And so those places may be considered sacred also. Yeah. Well, when you go down to basic vocabulary, the word akua in Hawaiian is deity and god or goddess. It could also be mean, again, we look at what is a spirit, ghost, devil, image, idol. So these are words that, again, describe that which is more than the normal human, you see. So anything in that sense can be considered akua. So in Hawaii, you don't have like one level of akua. You have akua come in a huge spectrum, horizontally and vertically. Yeah. But anything to do with superhuman, supernatural, more than what's normal, would be considered godly. And you can see this image here in the Hawaiian worldview, all natural phenomena of what we would call nature. The forces of nature are kind of considered the powers of divinity. Yeah, so even whether you're talking about thunder, hekili, or lightning with um, Lonomakua, or you're talking Pele, you can see within the powers of the natural world are represented by these so-called Akua figures. But everything at the core, this is the most important element, really, in understanding Hawaiian culture. And so I spent a lot of time talking about this. We'll actually come back to this in many, many stories. But the idea of what we call mana, and mana is not just a so-called Hawaiian concept or idea, but actually a very, very strong Polynesian concept you find amongst all so-called Polynesians. And what does it mean? Well, a supernatural power. Yeah, again, what is supernatural? More than what is natural. Some kind of energy, a force. Yeah, it can be physical, may not be physical, maybe metaphysical. The attributes of mana is that it's intangible, and mana is found in both living and non-living. Yeah, so things that are animate and inanimate. A human being has mana, but so does a table. So does a hat, perhaps. Yeah. The idea of mana can be transferred. It can be taken, it can be lost, it can be accrued by someone. So it's not something that's just is. It's something. Think of it as being fluid, flowing, like energy. Yeah, energy is never static, right? Things are always what in motion. Again, this is science. Yeah. So in the same sense of mana, it can flow, it can meander. Um, we don't really have a concept of bad or good mana. Sometimes I'll hear people that, oh, that person has bad mana. No, that person has bad intentions with their so-called mana. Accumulated or depleted by how you behave. Yeah, your mana will determine precedence. And in Hawaiian society, it's very simple, right? Let's look at a simple example. An older sibling is said to have more mana than the younger or a junior, just because of the fact of them being older. Age has mana, right? A great great grandparent, a 90-year-old kupuna, is seen to have much mana. Again, that's that wisdom because of experiences in their life. They have accumulated much of this mana. And what is mana again? Again, even things like reverence, even things like to recognize their wisdom is all part of the power to lead, to make important decisions is all part of mana. And then we have two types, yeah, ascribed and achieved. And very simply, oh, what is ascribed? As you again see, transference of mana. Ascribed is basically what you're born with, yeah, beyond your control. It is what you have. It is part of who you. It's your legacy. Yeah, what you are born with, your age, right? I don't have any control of my age. As I get older, my mana increases. My gender, right? We recognize male has a particular kind of power. Again, so does female, right? We know the most obvious, of course, our females have the power to birth. That is mana. Yeah, to bring life forward is mana. Your position in rank, your genealogy specifically, right? Who your ancestors are, have mana. Yeah, what they have done, performed, what they may be honored for, that's all part of your mana. You inherit your culture, your history, your assigned position is all part of mana. Now, I mean, just to give you an example, right? When Captain Cook arrives in Hawaii, he's seen to have lots of mana because he was the head guy, right? He's on the canoe, he's riding this craft they've never witnessed before. He's obviously the leader, therefore, he's the highest ranking person. And again, ranking, that's all signs of mana. Yeah. Now, achieved is also a way which mana can be transferred. Yeah, your etiquette, yeah, how you behave, how you hold yourself, right? If I hold myself with lots of dignity, I have lots of integrity. That's all part of mana. Yeah, right. What I can control, my expertise, right, and this comes from practice, from working hard. Yeah, how well you can perform in doing something. Maybe I'm a terrific artist or a musician. That's all part of that mana. Yeah, what is your expertise? Yeah, the more of an expert you are, obviously, by what you do, the more mana you have attained. So, in other words, I can increase my mana. I started from my natural talents. My natural talents are ascribed, but how I perform will raise the achievement level. Yeah, by practicing and working on my craft and my talent, my my expertise will grow, and therefore my mana will grow. Yeah, idea of traditions. Yeah, how well we hold on traditions. Yeah, and again, what is the purpose of traditions? Yeah. All actions at all times, anywhere. Yeah, so mana is something that you control. Mana isn't, kind of looking around and nobody's seeing me what I can do, and I can do something perhaps that's not as correct or not clean. I won't be judged. Well, in Hawaiian thinking, yeah, you know yourself, right? If I am a slacker, that is, it doesn't matter if anybody understands that. That my mana um, is has been lost. But if I perform and I try my best and I work hard, and Hawaiian we doing maya, I try to be as clean as possible. I try to make things as perfect as possible. That raises my mana. And of course, that's your success. And one of the things I always think about is, one of the kupuna I used to work a lot with, Uncle Eddie Ka'anana, he used to teach us, different kind of cultural things and, just thinking about how we would do things. And as the way he would, it's always done correctly. He never did things half-assed, as we would say. It was always done correctly. So even to this day, when I do things, I try my best. And part of it has to do with the idea is that I understand that that's my mana. You see, the fact that if I care and I work hard at my craft and I try to do things as best as I can, that increases my mana. But if I know in my mind, right, I'm lazy, I do things half-ass, where I should have tied something perfectly, I kind of know what is watching, and so I whatever cut corners. That is all a sign of losing mana. Now we come to the word ho'omana. So ho'omana is an interesting word. Sorry. Let me get this bigger. Now ho'omana is a combination of the word ho'o, and the word ho'o means to cause to happen, to make happen, purposely perform something. And the word mana, as we just discussed, yes, so ho'omana is to cause to have mana, to make something have this spiritual power, have this kind of energy, this power. Yeah, ideas of leadership, ideas of having integrity. Today we can think about mana as people when they walk in the room, and you can notice them as the so-called leader. the person everyone listens to. That's the person that has mana. They've built up the so-called respect. You see, so these words that we use, like respect, all are part of what we consider uh, or people or places that have mana. The more respect I have for something, the more I show my whether it's gratitude or my adherence to the idea that I authorize, I empower. That's ho'omana. So in Hawaiian thinking, those that are supernatural, those that have power, have increased their mana. And one of the ways they've increased their mana is the fact that they have been placed in authority. They've been placed in and so forth. And hence the actions of worship, right? If you are worship, yeah, you are receiving that mana, right? If you worship someone or somebody or some entity or some place, you are giving them that mana. Their mana is accruing. So it's very clear, yeah. Those that are more powerful, who have more mana, they are authorized by that mana. You don't just simply have that mana unless you're whatever you're born with. But the idea is to be, someone that is powerful. Yeah, is that you're giving that power, or a God that's power, right? So someone that has a following of 4,000 believers or faithful who follow that person has a lot more mana than somebody that only has 40. Yeah, and so this is direct correlation between what makes something have mana. The more your name is spoken, the more distinguished you are, the more respected that is, the more mana it has. And so we can look at, what does mana begin? Well, from our cosmogonies, yeah, from the beginning of time, that which created the power and energy that started everything is mana in itself. Mana is in all forms, and mana is that essence of energy and power that has created everything. Yeah, so even genealogically, when we look at mana, we know ancestrally that those prior to us, before us, have more mana than us as human beings. Well, some of the major four Akua, yeah, gods that we have, the deities, the major four major we're going to talk about right now, just to kind of get an understanding. Now, the thing to when you talk about the top four major Akua is to realize that it's not like they have totally separate realms of where they're worshipped. Yeah, think of it as being like a collage. They're overlapping. Yeah, so not distinct, but overlapping. So the first of the major Akua we're going to look at is Ku. Now, Ku means to upright, to stand up straight. As you can see in the image to the left, that is an image of the god so-called Ku, Akua Ku. Ku many times is attached to colors like red is a common color. So if offerings are made, we can think of why you would offer fish, for example, that are red, right? Because in honor of Ku. The clothing you wear, the so-called malo you use may be red. And these are all symbols of Ku. Anything to do with high, anything to do with the direction east, the right side of the body, the first 3 months out of the moon phase, anything with high and loftiness, including trees and mountains, and particular animals like the dog, the eel, which is the Hawaiian hawk, because the hawk flies way above, and fish, specifically red fish, are all in the realm of Ku. They're symbolic of Ku, their symbolism. Um, Very strong prayer and couple rituals, and such as the aha, which was probably the most strictest kind of very heavy ritual that was performed in a way in which the so-called new mo'i, the new ali'inui, would now take power. And that was true of her, what's called a ku ceremony, aha ceremony. He was a god of fishing, yeah, especially of war and politics, any kind of struggling, that sense of, you can notice in the stands, that power to defend oneself. That's all ku. And you can see, look at the example of the sea. Yeah, you can see in this cool image here, you can see his hair is braided. His nostrils are flared like he's getting ready to defend himself. Look at his mouth, that snarl. And you can see, yes, what he's exhibiting is that sense of physical power, the power to defend himself and go to war. That's all ku. Ku means to stand, right? And even ana, what you might think of being the so-called black magic or the arts of spells and so forth. It's all part of the realm of ku. The other, sometimes regarded to many ways, like the opposite of Ku, is the so-called god, ancestral god Lono. Now his colors most times are black. Actually, most times are black. You can see also on the left, sometimes it's white. But anyway, black is usually associated, especially color of animals or a pig that's black and so forth is all regarded as part of Lono's realm. He's also high. He's left Hema. Anything left or south is the opposite of Ku. Yeah, that's Hema. And you notice the name Kona. Yeah. So anytime you're talking about the leeward side of the islands, the Kona side, like Kona, Hawaii, Kona Oahu. And so Kona Oahu would be all Waikiki. The leeward side of the islands is considered Kona. Yeah. In fact, Kona comes from the word Tonga. It's the same word. That's his side of the island. Clouds, especially rain clouds, thunder clouds, the kind of storms that come, especially in the winter time. Yeah, coming in from October, November through February, that kind of storms, all connected to Lono, and therefore that's his season, called the Makahiki season. Yeah, that roughly runs around October, November-ish to February-ish, 3-4 month period of us during that season in which the Makahiki, the year, is counted. It's kind of like I always look at it as like Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and Easter all wrapped into one, including and the Olympics wrapped in there also. Yeah, he's connected with particular plants like the gourd, ipu, uwala, sweet potato, and the kukui. Yeah, the kukui nut tree. Pigs are common form of lono, especially black pigs. And most importantly, he's a very important akua, especially when you think about dry land farming or dry land crops like the sweet potato or the uhi and others that are grown mainly on areas where there's not a lot of rain. The drier side of the island, that's all dedicated to lono, that kind of farming. He's very much attached to fertility, especially healing, is all part of the realm of lono. Yeah, and you can see in the left here, you have the Akua Loa, the representative of the Makahiki. This is an image of Lono that you'd find, that's the face of the image that you find on the Akua Loa during the Makahiki that's brought out. And you can see this old image that was done during the time of the early explorers to, I think it's under Cook, Chorus, I think was the name. And you can see there's an actual festival going on, a sports festival. There's actually boxing happening. That's what I meant by I said Olympics, yeah, where they would have these kinds of games all celebrating the harvest festival time of the year. Right? This is the time of the year where you have huge storms coming, so you don't really do large major works. Yeah, but it's a time of rest. It's a time of celebration. Not a god. Kani is another ancestral god, like in the Kumulipo. And he has multiple colors, as you can see, red, black, white, yellow. His direction is right. He's the east, north. His nights of the moon are towards the end of the month, 27, 28. Anything to do with light, anything to do with fresh water, anything to do with thunder and lightning and all those kind of facets, yeah, are all part of the realm of Kani, the god Kani. He's also connected to the east. Yeah, the sunrise. Anything to do with birthing and sunrise is Kani. Yeah. And right. Yeah. Mai'a, which is the banana. Ko, which is sugarcane. Ohe, um, um, bamboo. And ava or kava are all plants that are associated with Kani. Yeah, and you can figure out the first few are all phallic, yeah, male phallic symbols. Yeah, again, like the name Kani. The fish that are provided to Kani or the animals, yeah, are usually silverish kind of fish are offered to Kani, including the moa and pua'a, the pig and the chicken, which generally can be from black or can be white. And so these are particular animals that may be offerings for Kani. We also have the time period, the Kiala Polohiva Nui a Kane, the shining black pad of Kane. Really what it's talking about, the two tropics. We're going to see one for kind of the Tropic of Cancer, the Tropic of Capricorn, yeah, which denote the so-called tropics. Yeah, if you look at the globe, yeah. This has to do with the limitations of the sun, yeah, as it shines. We know that the sun, well, it appears that the sun is moving, actually, of course, but we are moving. Yeah, so the sun will move across the horizon, yeah, throughout the year, right? We know in the wintertime it's more towards from Maui and more towards Kaho'olawe, towards the south. And the winter time it moves up more north, yeah, above Lanai and the West Maui Mountains. Yeah. Enter male procreation, wetland farming, fresh water, fish ponds, and also ana. Again, black magic is all tied to the god Kani as an ancestral god. Yeah. Now, Kane has a brother, right? We know from genealogy, Kumulipo, sometimes mentioned as a twin brother. Kanaloa is almost like the opposite of Kane, right? So if Kane is east, Kanaloa becomes west. If Kane is birth, Kanaloa has to do with death and so forth. Kanaloa also has the same colors, red, black, but opposite of Kane, he's now left, west, yeah, the south. Kanaloa has particular nights of the moon that's dedicated to him, the 23rd and 24th. Sunset, in fact, is a very strong Kanaloa time. So if you think about the sun setting in the west, as the sun sets, you can see the trail, yeah, that follows the sun. Yeah, that's all connected with Kanaloa. He's also connected to phallic symbols like maia, banana, uh, animals like the he'e, the octopus, right? You can feel octopus. Yeah, there's eight sides to the, I'm sorry, eight legs to the so-called octopus. And octopus, are symbolic of navigation, right? You think of a star, a chart, a sailing chart, yeah, north, south, east, west. And so that idea of navigation on the open ocean is very much attached to Kanaloa. The ocean itself is the realm of Kanaloa. And the most simplest term, ocean, is Kanaloa. The largest creatures of the ocean, the life of the ocean is all dependent on Kanaloa, all the way back to, of course, the coral. Kanaloa is tied to winter, and also he has his own Kialapula Hivanua Kanaloa. That's the southern. Yeah, so that's why winter time, yeah, the southern limits of the sun at winter time is all Kanaloa. And the opposite of birth, of course, is death. Even the island of Kaho'olawe that we can see in this image here, that's all connected to Kanaloa. Well, we also have some very powerful women, Akua Wahine. And just to recognize, we have these and women are many times are connected with real natural phenomena of the world. Yeah, like Pele, right? What does Pele represent? Volcanic action, the power of birthing, creating new land, that kind of energy that's very beautiful and yet very dangerous. Yeah, that's all the realm of Pele. We have Hiyaka, her younger sister, who, like Pele, comes to Hawaii, but she also is very much attached with healing, especially the kind of healing of plants that appear after a volcanic eruption. The first plants to come out of the so-called lava field are all connected with Hiyaka. The goddess Hina, one of the ancient goddesses of Polynesia, sometimes called Singa. Singa. Yeah, the word Hina actually means to be in this direction. Yeah, so we have Ku and Hina. So many times Ku, the god Ku, is associated with Hina. Yeah, or the male and the female. Yeah, even the goddess of the moon. Yeah, Hina. Haumea, who's also Papa, and she is the goddess of birthing. Many anything with birthing is connected with Haumea, the power of the land. Yeah, of Haumea. In fact, sometimes she's called Pele's mother. Yeah. Walinu'u, Kihavahine, Mo'inanea, Kalani Mainu'u. These are all famous female reptilian goddesses. Best way to describe them. Yeah. You might want to call them dragons, or in Hawaii we call the word mo'o. Yeah. Like a large lizard, perhaps. And they generally are associated with fresh water. And I'm going to send out an extra credit later on so you guys can watch and stuff. But about Kalani Mainu'u. But these are all ancient names. And in fact, the only one you kind of got to really pay attention to us, I should say, is first is Kiha. She is the goddess of Moku'ula from Lahaina, where she was one of the daughters of Pi'ilani, Kala Ahiana, who was transformed into a goddess, and she becomes a very powerful Mo'o goddess from the time of Pi'ilani all the way, in fact, to Kamehameha. And during Kamehameha's time, she was said to be Kamehameha's favorite goddess. And then you have Mo'o Inanea, who's kind of seen as the grandmother of all Mo'o. And so you find her in many stories. And I'll be doing an extra credit with Kalani Mainu'u. And the last two, Poliahu and Lilinoe. Poliahu many times has to do with the snow on the mountains, Lilinoe, the mist on the high mountains. And these are realm of these women. They're said to be very, very beautiful. Yeah, and very, very so-called special. Yeah, but yeah, you can see how the realms are much, much attached to the natural world. And I'm going to stop here. I'm going to come up with part two.